as well. Lots to get to. Let's get to it first. Corey Morgan says, so what point is the Constitution? He's responding to this Globe and Mail article from yesterday. From October 16th. It says, Ottawa to press ahead with oil and gas cap despite Supreme Court decision. What's the point of a constitution? Further, what's the point of confederation? It's time to go. He's saying Alberta should be independent. I am a firm believer that if you have an independent state like that, you will be infiltrated by Marxists very, very quickly, and you will be turned to their goals rather than the wants and needs of the citizens, much like Canada has been turned to the goals of the WEF, one world government, blah, 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 rather than the people here. We're not listened to. We're secondary or third or fourth, depending on if you're a milk farmer or not, right? Mackenzie Gray says, Bloc leader Yves Francois Blanchette says he will be voting against the CPC motion on carbon taxes later today. And look at that, no poppy. And jeans, slubby. Very, very schlubby. It is not a good look there, Yves Francois Blanchette. Chris says, motion defeated. Canadian Liberals and the Bloc MPs vote against giving Canadians a break on home heating carbon taxes. Shame. Opposition motion, carbon tax pause on home heating, about to start. Okay, so they voted it down. Quebec doesn't pay the carbon tax. They're exempt from the carbon tax. Why are they exempt from the carbon tax? Got me. I don't know. Good question. Great question. But that's the truth. There you go. And so why does a regional party that pretends to be a federal party, who doesn't have any real interest in running anybody outside of Quebec or New Brunswick, why is that party voting against the rest of Canada while benefiting from these carbon taxes? I think there's a conflict of interest there. I think that's bad. I think possibly we should look into that. Here's the in the chamber House of Commons vote result. The CPC opposition motion, carbon tax pause on home heating, was defeated. 135 yeas. That's the Liberals. Excuse me, that's not the Liberals. That's the NDP and the Conservatives. And nays 186. That's the Liberals and the Bloc. So there you go. What are you going to do, right? What are you going to do? Here's Pierre Poilievre. He says, Trudeau is in Ottawa today. There's nothing on his calendar until 7 p.m., yet he's not showing up for question period because he's hiding from debating me on the carbon tax crisis he caused by creating two classes of Canadians. He knows he's not worth the cost. So he's hiding, right? The coward of the cottage, as he was formerly known. Pierre Poilievre again says, the Bloc and Trudeau have formed a carbon tax coalition. They want to quadruple your taxes on your home heating. They're not worth the cost. Signed to help Conservatives axe the tax. I hate these sign here because you just get into an unending email chain of like, oh, please give us money. We're fighting for you. Please give us money. True North says Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre accuses Justin Trudeau of forming a carbon coalition with the Bloc Québécois. This is 3 minutes. It's honestly worth listening to because it's simplified, and I think he puts together a very cogent argument. And this is the speech that I saw, this part of the speech, that I thought to myself, he doesn't need to make a further argument. He can just keep repeating this, and most people will agree with him. Most people already agree with him. And I'm not advocating. I don't trust the CPC. I'm not advocating for you to vote for Pierre Poilievre. I'm trying to tell you what most people are going to see when they see this. And when they see this, they're going to see a viable plan from a reasonable sounding guy who's not an idiot. Okay. And they are going to like it. They already like it. Look at the seat projections. Okay. So the wind has shifted. It looks like Trudeau's on the way out unless something massive shifts. And Poilievre doesn't need to do anything else, although he will, because it looks like the machine has booted up, has started running now. And because it's running, it's easier to just keep it running. So he's going to keep testing slogans. He's going to keep using and refining, etc. But this axe the tax thing doesn't need to make a different argument. That's it. Here we go. That's it. Like he could go into an election right now with this and win.
Justin Trudeau confirmed again today that he's not worth the cost. But what we learned is that he's now got a new carbon tax coalition with the separatists to divide our country. Given that the NDP was forced to flip-flop on Trudeau's plan to quadruple the tax, he had to find a new partner to keep him in power and avoid this non-confidence vote from passing. And who was there to save him? The separatists. So he's now signed on with the separatists to divide Canadians into two separate classes. Those who will have to pay carbon tax on their home heat, and a small minority who will get a pause from the pain. All of Trudeau's MPs sold out their constituents and voted to make their home heating more expensive. Trudeau and his costly MPs have divided our country, raised our taxes, and pushed our people out into the cold. After 8 years of Justin Trudeau, 2 million people, a record-smashing 2 million people, had to go to the food bank in a single month. After 8 years of Trudeau, we've had the worst inflation in 4 decades and the fastest rises in interest rates in monetary history. After 8 years of Trudeau, housing costs have doubled, and the share of an average paycheck required to make payments on an average home is higher than ever before. It now takes 25 years to save up for a down payment on an average Toronto home. It used to be you'd pay off an entire mortgage in that time period before Trudeau. And after 8 years of Trudeau, you can now buy a 20-bedroom castle in Scotland for a lower price than a 2-bedroom home in Kitchener. After 8 years of Trudeau, criminals ask if they can stay in jail longer so that they don't have to get out and pay the rent in his housing hell. And to make matters worse, Trudeau wants to quadruple the carbon tax on your heat, gas, and groceries. So with today's vote, and with his hide and divide strategy, Justin Trudeau has set us up for the carbon tax election. We don't know when it will come, but it will happen. And it will be a simple choice between Justin Trudeau's plan to quadruple the tax on your heat, gas, and groceries, and my common sense plan to axe the tax and bring home lower prices.
People are going to like that. People are going to flock to that. They already are. So there you go. And because it sounds reasonable, but I was out with some friends yesterday and they said, so, you know, what's going to happen? And I said, Pierre's going to get elected and start building 15-minute cities. And people are going to love it until they realize what he's doing. And then they're going to say, how could you? But then you'll just vote for Team Red, right? Which would be the same thing. They'll build 15-minute cities and then mandate the digital ID because the gang violence is too bad, right? Or whatever it is. Whatever happened in Sweden, that's what's going on now. True North says Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are calling on the Liberals to allow a free vote for this afternoon's motion, which calls for a nationwide pause on the carbon tax on all home heating. I don't know if there was a free vote, but the outcome was predetermined. They knew what was going to happen before the vote happened in the chamber. Here's Liberal MP flipping off Conservative MPs, but I think he was more flipping off his constituents. This is my MP here, Lloyd Longfield, right? Sitting there smiling away. It's low. It looks low resolution, but yeah, he's there. It looks like he's got 2 fingers up and he was itching with one of them, right? And it's just poor taste. Here's the video of it in motion. See? Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So childish behavior from childish Liberals who vote against their own constituents. And here's Dan McTeague. The point of this was to have a list of people who vote against their own constituents and have the constituents start to shame them. That's the point. That's why they did this. This is to arm citizens and say, why are you voting against me? Why are you voting for me to keep paying when the eastern provinces don't pay? And so Barbara says, my loser of an MP voted to keep us paying the tax on home heating. Thanks for caring, Dan. And Dan McTeague says, send him packing, friends. And right, there's people who are pushing back using this information that has been gleaned by this forced vote by the Conservative leader. You understand the strategy? That's the strategy. Chris says Prime Minister Trudeau did not show up in the House of Commons for the vote on the carbon tax. He still managed to vote remotely to deny all Canadians the same relief on their home heating this winter. His carbon tax will cost families. This carbon tax punishment will cost families about $300 extra this winter. So that's not good for anybody. That $300 could go somewhere else, right? Maybe a Great Wolf Lodge trip or a Christmas present or 2, right? Or 3 or 2, depending, right? These days. Scott Moe is responding to this whole thing. The motion to extend the home heating exemption and carbon tax fairness to all Canadians was defeated because the Liberal government was supported by the Bloc Québécois, a party that wants to break up Canada. And so that's Scott Moe's response to this whole thing. True North says, all this is doing is causing unfairness, making life less affordable, and really harming the most vulnerable as we get into the winter season. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith slams Justin Trudeau's carbon tax. So here she is talking about this. And again, nobody's happy about this. Nobody at all. Here we go.
We believe very strongly that natural gas should be treated as a cleaner fuel. We know that the export of LNG internationally is going to be able to reduce dirtier fuels, coal and wood and dung. And in fact, we've already seen what happens in jurisdictions that don't have access to clean natural gas. They convert back to coal. So if this is truly a global problem, then we need global thinking and global solutions. And we should be exporting more of our cleaner fuel to reduce global emissions and not punishing our customers here at home. It's not our customers' fault that the alternatives are not available to them. I do not share David Eby's, Premier Eby's enthusiasm for heat pumps, because in our province they don't work particularly well at below minus 25. You can't get insurance without having a backup to your heat pump, and so it's not really a credible option in our province. There may be other options that emerge in future with technology, but in the meantime, all this is doing is just causing unfairness, making life less affordable, and really harming our most vulnerable as we get into the winter season.
I don't like the idea of relying on future, as yet uncreated, unrealized technology to save us, from freezing in the cold, right? From freezing in the dark. That's not a viable plan to me. Like, we've got a situation where we have a very good technology that works with a fuel source it may as well be never ending, right? Oil and gas. Oil is the second most abundant liquid on Earth. Water is the first most abundant. And so we should be able to realistically use the technology that works and not be taxed on these necessary technologies, and not have to pin our hopes and dreams on as yet uncreated fantasy technologies to create heat, right? For a heat pump, minus 25, I just don't think that's not gonna fly. But they're pretending like this is some kind of carbon tax solution. It's not a solution. Heat pumps have been around for a long time. There's a reason that we don't have them here in Ontario and we don't have them in, Alberta. It's because they don't work in our climate. It's very simple. Here's Danielle Smith again. She says, Canada's premiers stand in solidarity on the carbon tax. We unanimously agree that the carbon tax must not be used as a wedge issue to divide Canadians, but must be applied equitably across our nation. What does equitably mean, Danielle Smith? Furthermore, the Prime Minister of Canada has not met collectively with Canada's premiers since 2018, as healthcare, housing, and affordability still continues to hold Canadians back, and there's a clear lack of leadership from our federal government. Here is our joint statement. So the premiers released a joint statement. They were all here. And this is David Eby dissenting with the other premiers, saying heat pumps are great and we love car taxes. So it's kind of funny. He says, quote, this is CPAC reporting, "For us, the carbon tax has been an effective mechanism to reduce carbon pollution. Since 2017, our emissions have gone down despite dramatic increases in population," says BC's Premier Dave Eby of federal carbon pricing policy following meeting with other premiers. So that's 2 minutes. I'm not going to play that for right now, but I think it's funny how we're now getting, oh yeah, after 10 years, the carbon tax is finally paying off and our population's exploding, but our CO2 is not exploding. Our emissions aren't exploding. I don't believe these people. I don't believe the official numbers, because we've seen examples, especially in the COVID data, of when numbers start to bear out for the opposition, for the side that they don't want to have numbers that prove what they're saying. They just remove the numbers. They just stop reporting the data. They just say, oh, well, we forgot about that. We lost it. The phones got wiped, right? Like all of this stuff. And we're just supposed to take it. I'm not going to take what they say at face value, because I don't believe them, because they've lied so often. Bartley says, that's a good name, Bartley, says Wab Kinew. He's the new Manitoba premier. He says, he makes it explicit, asks Ottawa to remove the carbon tax from natural gas home heating. So there you go. I think these guys know that there's nothing, they're not going to change anything. The only way to remove this carbon tax is going to be to remove the Trudeau government. And that's going to be interesting. Although, like I said, it seems like Poilievre's in the driver's seat. He's on track for, if you believe the polls, a big majority, 208, more than 200, 201, 208. I've seen both in the seat projections. 170 is needed for a majority. So he could even lose some seats and still be okay. But it's a very interesting situation because Jagmeet Singh is incentivized by his personal situation to not trigger anything until 2025 because then he gets his pension. So I mean, man, it's a very, very concerning situation in my opinion. Wide Awake Media says, game over, we're dealing with a fraud. Here's a geologist talking about how much of a fraud global warming is. He offers two pieces of facts that he says this proves without a doubt that we're dealing with frauds. I'll play the first one. It's a minute long. Maybe I'll play both. But again, the green technology push, the idea that we need to move from a technology that works to an as yet undeveloped technology, or heat pumps, if you're super lucky, is faulty. This boogeyman has been dreamed up by the media, and it's not actually something that's going to harm us as a species, but the policies that we do to counteract what we think may harm us may end up harming us. And that's not great, right? So that's very concerning. So here is this Australian guy saying global warming's bunk and, we should ignore it. But here we go.
I have demonstrable facts. These facts are validated and these facts are repeatable. Fact number one, no one has ever shown that human emissions of carbon dioxide drive global warming. Never been shown. And if it could be shown, then you would have to show that the 97% of emissions, which are natural, do not drive global warming. Game over. We are dealing with a fraud. It's a scientific fraud from day one. We hear the propaganda that increases of the gas of life, a trace gas in the atmosphere, will bring a disaster and that we will have runaway global warming. Sorry, folks, we've known for 200 years from chemistry that it's the exact inverse. Now, I'm sure some of you tried this last night at the dinner with a champagne or a beer and you forgot to drink it and it warmed up and it kept bubbling and bubbling and bubbling and bubbling. And that is the inverse solubility of carbon dioxide. We've known that for 200 years. We see it from the ice cores. When we drill into ice, we have chemical fingerprints that tell us what the temperature was, and we have little bits of trapped air. And we can show that when we had natural warming, some 650 to 6,000 years later, we had an increase in carbon dioxide. It's not carbon dioxide that drives temperature, it's the exact inverse. Another fraud.
Carbon dioxide does not drive temperature. Less than 0.5% of the total cannot. It's absolutely, it defies logic. It defies reason, honestly. You can't believe that. Here's Seamus trying to make the case that heat pumps are like coal, and if you see a problem, you have to solve the problem. But here he says, see a problem, find a solution. We're getting people off of home heating oil and onto heat pumps. It'll save them a lot of money, and any province and territory can get on board. The argument sounds reasonable, but it's bunk. Here we go.
We identified a problem, and we have found a solution. And I don't, this is a pause. The price on pollution is still very much there, and providing that signal to people that time is now, and we should do it now, and we can get a critical mass of people on heat pumps in the next 3 years. I mean, if depending on where you fall on the median household income, you're either getting a free heat pump, or you're getting an interest-free. That's pretty good. And we're going to be doing that right across the country. It just so happens that
interest-free? So, I get to borrow the money for free? I think predatory lending is a bad idea. And selling people get a heat pump because it's a free heat pump. It's not a zero-sum game. If you add, so say the furnace by itself is enough to heat your house and keep it at temperature. Some people have, and I talked to my friend in Nova Scotia, Noel, he's on the panel on Sundays, and he was saying that most people have wood and oil as a backup because oil doesn't have, wood, oil. What was the other thing? Electricity, I guess, if you want, right? But if the electricity's out, you want to be able to fire up your generator and run your furnace without having to be too concerned about it. And so having a heat pump would cost a lot more electricity than, say, like a blower on a furnace, right? And so it's really just strange that you could be in a situation where you're looking at replacing a backup, and the backup is going to rely on electricity, and that's weird. Like the heat pump, I don't think can be a backup. And the other part is the heat pump is, in its usual, like regular everyday use, going to cost electricity, going to cost money. And that isn't zero sum. Is it more or less expensive than the oil? If it's more expensive than the oil, and I think it would be, I think our electricity prices are going up because of the insane policies of these governments. So if you have, say, your electricity bill is $200 a month, just ballparking, and then you install this heat pump and now it's $300 a month, have you saved money? I don't think that it's true. Anyway, he's saying that incentivizing
that this
is
problem
good.
is particularly acute in Atlantic Canada, with half of PEI, well over a third in Nova Scotia, and about 20% in Newfoundland and Labrador. So we have a particular problem there, and we have premiers who are willing to work with us. Premiers in other provinces are more than happy to join this program. My invitation to Premier Smith and Moe stands. I've been here in front of mics for 3 days now saying it. Please join our program. It's a good program for people in your provinces who are on home heating oil. The problem is with home heating oil is you're on it. It is by far the most expensive, by far the most polluting, but it is cost prohibitive to get off of it. So if you see a problem, you try and find a solution. And I think it's, I don't understand. This country is built on carve-outs and pauses and compromises. That's the only way this country runs. We're not dogmatic about things. We try and find a problem. Now, it's really important that we maintain this price on pollution, and we do here. But we are taking a pause in this case because home heating oil is so polluting but so cost prohibitive to change. We did it with...
So it's very, very polluting. So we won't have anybody pay the carbon tax on it. Okay. Doesn't make much sense. But in 3 years, boy howdy, that carbon tax is just going to be massive, right? I don't agree with Seamus's assessment of the situation. I think that he's not giving us the whole picture. Here's Jagmeet Singh, and of course, he doesn't blame anybody but the big oil and gas. That's it, big oil and gas. That's who's to blame. He says, while your heating bill goes up, so does big oil's profits. They get away with it for two reasons, Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre. The NDP will introduce a motion to take GST off home heating for every Canadian and make big oil pay for it. Justin and Pierre, who will you stand with? It's very, very interesting. So the Liberals are just fine voting against their constituents with the home heating, but now the GST thing, and now, right, Jagmeet Singh will browbeat them into doing what he wants? No, I don't think so. We'll see how that all plays out. I don't know. The whole idea of the carbon tax, the whole idea of Canada shifting the world on carbon and saving the planet from global warming or whatever they want us to believe, I don't believe any of it. They've lied so often, and most recently, again, about COVID, that their credibility is in tatters, and them saying, if you just give us all your money and buy a heat pump, that's going to save global warming, that's going to fix things. Nah, nope, sorry, I'm not buying it. Not buying it, not by a long shot. And also, I'd really like accountability for the lies that they told. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful